Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. So I think it's just, yeah, I don't know what to say about it. I'm too shy. You know what I mean? I'm too nervous. People won't believe me, so I assume just don't do shit right. That's not always a good idea. But the thing is I already have enough problems as it is, right? Versus like, not to say it would or wouldn't, whatever. But when you pour your heart out like that, and then like someone doesn't believe you about something, you're kind of like, yeah, my life is full of not being believed, you know. And for something like, for me not to want to talk about something as it is already, you know what I mean? Um, Makes it a sensitive subject, right? So it's like basically you're not to say you are, but you know, like I'm asking myself to take a risk to potentially um, hurt my own feelings, right? And people are so hypercritical, but like the point is I'm trying to lay the foundation where people understand that just take this as whatever you want it to be. You know what I mean? The thing I'm trying to explain. The fact of the matter is that, and this is what I am trying to currently journal or write about, is that since the morning of 9/11, before the events of 9/11 that occurred, I had a bleeding ulcer in my stomach for the first time ever, and I had to leave school early the morning of 9/11. Right? I didn't even know it had happened, you know, and I wasn't like the most healthy kid ever, but I did miss school, you know, semi frequently. But that morning, my parents showed up to school to pick me up on the morning of 9/11, and they thought that I had heard about what had happened and that the school had let everybody go home early. That wasn't the case. I had no fucking clue it even happened, and I got like super sick that day. And I always thought that was kind of strange, right? And that sort of thing has happened to me now, like 30 times in my life, 30 or 40 times or more that I can recall, like specific instances. But the part about not being believed is shitty because what it consists of is that, well, like I can't prove it. You know what I mean? Like you have to take my word for it. And I'm from the show me state where like you have to be able to present me some sort of evidence. Like I wouldn't just believe me if I were saying it, right? So I try to hold myself to the highest standard possible as far as like what you present is factual or factual evidence or whatever. I'm like, but the thing is that that's why I'm trying to lay the framework for it not to be something that's considered like, oh, this guy's claiming some sort of making some sort of claim that he can't prove. It's just that the if you were to document everything I say and mutter to myself throughout the day and like everything that I talk about throughout the day, you would find that there is probably far more like interesting corollaries to the next day's events than you would think are normal, right? Like it would be one thing if it were just like once, you know, you say something and like, oh yeah, I was just talking about that. But it's so frequent that I can't ignore the shit basically. And like I said, it all started essentially and has come and gone numerous times since then, but especially over the last like 4 or 5 years, it's gotten more frequent. But it started all like on the morning of 9/11 pretty much. And it's just one of those things like, well, you know, my only proof of it is, well, I say so, right? And then I could have my parents corroborate. But the thing is, like, at some point in time, I would like to eventually go to school, get the nurses to say something, or get the principal to remember, or, you know, what happened that day and all that stuff. But the thing is, I'm trying to explain to other people more times throughout my life that this sort of thing has happened. Because at some point in time, like, I ignored it and ignored it and ignored it, but not to say whatever. I'm just trying to go about it in a way that's like I'm not making some outrageous claim. I'm saying that this is the evidence, and if this is the evidence that's enough to convince you of something, then I have a lot more interesting things to show you, basically. Um, Versus like, well, I'm making this claim, the blah blah blah, or, you know, like. But if you've studied remote viewing and all this other stuff, like, no, there's certainly some either I don't want to call it pseudoscience, but like some not understood part of science that doesn't necessarily um, fully explain like the mind's eye and how we perceive things that happen in the present time and all that stuff. So, without trying like, and I don't want to get into like being a fucking kook either. You know what I mean? So like my standard of what I think um, you know, the standard for what I would say is like an acceptable amount of like, not to say evidence or proof or substantial comments or whatever, is more than just, well, you have to take my word for it. I don't ever want to give off the impression that I'm some guy that's like just some kook making an outrageous claim or whatever. But for whatever reason, and another time I can mention, you know, and this is one of those you just have to take my word for it. On October the 6th, what year was it? 2023, 2022, whenever it was, right? I'd gotten into not an argument with my mom, but I was talking to my mom about something, and I was like, I was ranting and raving about how the government had treated me, you know what I mean? Which was normal, you know, normal for me to be fucking complaining about the government or whatever. And I kept saying like, I wish I have the text message somewhere, but the very next morning, well, not the next morning, the morning of, like in the middle of the night, I had say a dream, a vision, but like I was like jolted awake. And I never have done this ever before, never once in my life, right? Did I do this before or since? But I woke up and out of bed, like stood up, sat up straight, and I said, Jesus loves little children, like that scene from Dogma, right? And I thought that was weird. I'm like, I never wake up singing church stuff, you know what I mean? I don't even go to church, right? And I'm like, that's very bizarre. And then when I reread the text message I sent to my mom, dude, it was like one of the most bizarre things ever. Like, remove all context from the thing, right? Remove all the, what do you call it, subject matter, make it objective, right? And it would sounded like a message from somebody that was being attacked, you know what I mean? Like, really, like, and giving directions as to where it was coming from, and all of this other really just kind of bizarre shit. So that requires an amount of assuming to be done on somebody's part for that to make sense. But it did happen. I was jolted out of my sleep in the middle of the night and started singing a song about Jesus, right? And then was like, what the fuck was that about, right? Went back to sleep, woke up, and the first thing I seen on the news the next morning was October the 7th. All the stuff that happened in Israel, right? And I forget what year it was exactly, but so that was just another one of those just kind of like very bizarre circumstances where my dreams have a tendency to indicate that I'm picking up on something that is happening or hasn't yet happened exactly, right? And for whatever reason in particular, and I wish it weren't, you know, it always seems to be rooted like during, before, after, right before like some sort of major tragedy occurs, right? And yeah, it's shitty. It's one of those things though where if that were the only instance of that occurring, it would be coincidence, right? You're like, okay, well that happens, you know. But the frequency at which it happens, in particular, or in reference to, or in relation to one specific place, it makes you wonder, like, what the fuck's really going on? That's all. Yeah, I'll get into more of it eventually, but some of it shit's like, it's personal, you know, and I don't like talking about the shit, you know, mostly. I don't like talking most of the time anyway, but more or less, I just want to be understood by the end of this, you know, but the thing is that I know that there are some people that have picked up on this about me. This goddamn priest is trying to kill me. Really? Oh, and then your fucking husband wants to show up. Are you fucking serious? Anyway. Yeah, so like, most of the shit's neither here nor there. That's why I'm not making some sort of outrageous claim. I'm just telling you what happened. And you can believe me or not believe me. And if you think it's weird, or if you think it's like, oh, that's nothing, then okay, cool. You know, like now if you say like I'm making it up, that'll hurt my feelings. Whereas like just saying like, I believe you, just it's not significant to me. I'm like, okay, well, cool. Then I maybe need to do some self-reflecting or self-examining, right, to determine why it is that I find it interesting if it's not significant. But another instance that happened here recently, and it's you guys can sit there and you can go read the tweet yourself if you want to, was about a month ago. I kept having this dream, a vision. I say a dream, a vision, but like significant, like shit out of place, right? Like I'm like, oh well, this is weird. Like 3 or 4 nights in a row, I'm like, I was in New York, and I'm not going to tell you which person, whatever, but somebody you well know, and I feel like I know pretty well, was showing me around town in New York, and he's like, I want you to see this watch store. He's like, I need you to see this watch. Like, I want you to, like, he was like, I'm going to get you this watch. You have to see it, right? It's the coolest thing ever. I'm like, okay, dude, whatever, like one night, that's fine. I wake up, I'm like, that's kind of a strange dream, but, shit, dreams are weird sometimes, right? And I posted, I'm like, okay, well, second night, I'm like, okay, another fucking dream, the same person, like, he's there with me. Yeah, did you see the watch yet? I'm like, what watch are you fucking talking about? Third night in a row, right? I have another dream, and I finally get fed up with the shit, and I go, I get on Twitter, and I posted the thing, and I said, what I say, like, I have had a recurring dream every night for the last 3 nights now about this goddamn watch, a wristwatch, and I have never worn a wrist space watch, because it wasn't, like, emphasis on the watch, not necessarily having to be a wristwatch, but just a watch or whatever. And then I swear to God, the very next day, the Prime Minister of Israel made a post on Twitter where all it said was watch, and it was the proof of life video or whatever. But the night before I said, people kept saying like, oh, Benjamin Netanyahu's dead or whatever, like, oh, fucking poppycock, right? And I said, like, based on the dreams and stuff that I was having, I said, as a matter of fact, I said, you cannot kill Benjamin Netanyahu where he is currently, right? And then the very next day, like 12 hours later, he made that post, you know what I mean? Which is like, oh, well, yeah, that doesn't prove anything. He might just, like, oh, finish the sentence. He might read my tweets. Why the fuck would he read my tweets, right? Like, why? I have like 12 followers, you know what I mean? Like, why the fuck would he, of all people? So, and that was when he was at the coffee shop, right? And, yeah, I don't know what to make of any of it. The thing is that you don't think that's weird, and it always has to do with Israel. Yeah, it's a little weird. If I had the whole other times, like, fucking, it said something about a television station, or, just couldn't capture what, and then like 10, 20 minutes later, like an hour later, I saw on the news that they had captured a television station in Syria or whatever. It's just some of the weirdest shit, dude. It's like, you neither here nor there, but if it were only once, it would be like, okay. Another time when I was younger, I had a dream I was suffocating, right? And for whatever reason, I heard like a voice in my head say, well, just count how long you can't breathe, right? Or whatever. I'm like, okay, whatever. Counted out. When I woke up, I wrote the numbers down, and sure as shit, hand on a stack of Bibles, the very next day, the lottery numbers, the pick 3 lottery numbers, were the numbers that I had written down. And that is weird in and of itself, and like, I'm not that starved for attention to make something like that up. But I had another dream shortly thereafter about something to do with a quantum computer, and it had I drew a picture that went along with it, and I had a dream journal where I journaled all this stuff at some point in time when I was younger. Oh, fucking. You forget me? Freaking person you ganked earlier? Anyway, about a quantum computer, and I wrote the numbers down from that, and it was also the exact same numbers that were referenced in a news article about a week later. And I also had a vision of a bunch of black birds falling from the sky. And I wrote this all in my journal, right? And like 1, 2, 3, within 5 days or whatever days or how many days it was that I journaled all my dreams, like a whole bunch of the shit came true. And things got kind of weird for me at the time, right? But that's when I was like maybe 19 years old, 20, right? And I thought that was a bit strange, you know, and like didn't think much of it. My parents were kind of like, "Oh, cool. Can you pick us the lottery numbers again?" Like, yeah, it would be nice, wouldn't it? Um, so I thought that was strange. But it's to say, it's like, how well documented can you, like, you have to take my word for some of the shit. If you don't, if you don't take my word for it, that's not going to hurt my feelings. Calling me a liar is going to hurt my feelings. But I hope if you get to know me well enough, you'd know I wouldn't make the shit up, basically. And I'm not that starved for attention. In fact, I prefer not to have it, if at all possible. But I feel like branching out, talking to people, getting to meet people and stuff might help eventually. Where, you know, interfacing with people and all that stuff is something that I have to do a little better. But so yeah, I know this sounds like kind of like a rant or a ramble or whatever. Is this the guy that ganked me earlier? Shadow Priest did. If that's the same mage that jumped me when that Shadow Priest showed up. But don't care, just here to kill the guy that was fucking with me. If I die or not. The guy pissed me off earlier. Yeah, I don't know. But without getting into detail, like, because some of the shit is kind of personal, you know, there's a lot of things that there's some evidence of, some proof of, and then a lot of shit you have to take my word for. But the events leading up to Donald Trump's almost assassination on both of the attempts too, nonetheless, um, there was something weird that on one of them there is proof of, you know, publicly I tweeted something not significant to that specific thing, but it is kind of strange, you know. It's enough to go, that is a bit weird, you know, like. But the things that I said to myself that day before and the things that happened to me the day before are significant, that cannot be ignored, and they're kind of personal, so I can't necessarily explain them. Getting to know somebody eventually, yeah, I obviously would be able to tell them, right? But I don't like necessarily putting out some of the stuff. And then the events and the shit that happened to me years prior that were kind of odd, as far as things in regards to that crazy piece of shit at the golf course or whatever, that can't necessarily be ignored too, you know. But I don't have any proof of the second thing really, but just a whole bunch of weirdness. That's all, more or less. If I can put out my feelers to find out if anybody else has had similar experiences. Laughed at. Get laughed at. Did he respec? He respec Palm Pyro just to try and fight me. Jumped me at half health as a Palm Pyro mage. Good for you. I'm not even fucking trying to really play right now, to be honest. I'm just trying to get my mind off some things. Like I'll go ahead and say, I'm not going to say in reference to what or whatever, but the day before Donald Trump's assassination, I got very sick and I fell unconscious on the floor, you know, and I'll leave it at that. You know, like that shit does not happen to me hardly ever. You know, it's happened to me maybe a few other times. The morning of 9/11 being another one of them. So, how do you ignore that kind of thing when it happens? You know, plus some um, vague references to something that you could consider it to be kind of circumstantial if you look at it from the right angle or whatever. But yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Now that happened to me once when I was in the fourth grade, and I can't say I got that sick on the morning of 9/11, but I got very ill, you know, and I but the day before Donald Trump nearly getting assassinated, no, I fucking collapsed to the ground, sick, right? Um, so yeah, it's like the type of thing you can't ignore, basically. It is a bit personal, but without getting any details or anything, it's like one of those you have to take my word for it, right? That's probably only happened to me 4 times in my entire life, that falling down kind of thing. Is this the same guy that was just ganking me over here? Wearing the same gear. More Vexes. Anyway, yeah, neither here nor there. Like, I'm not a fucking crazy person. That's why I'm not trying to make some, like, outrageous claim. Like, I just say, if that type of thing's interesting to you, more or less, um, if you have similar experiences, I would really like to hear about them. That's all. If that makes sense. Jerry. Oh, and I posted something and deleted it because I don't necessarily. I feel like better just talking about it. I feel like a post is like whatever, but uh, like I say, in regards to things that occur in Israel for whatever reason. So that I mentioned the thing that happened the morning of the October the 6th, October the 7th, or whatever. But before the shit even happened, right? And with that what's his name, Yahya Sinwar guy, I kept having a vision while I was like not asleep but not awake, kind of like just hanging out, just drifting in and out of consciousness, kind of like awake but not awake. And I kept seeing a guy, and I could just tell he was desperate, you know. And he kept grabbing it, either a stick or a rock, and like picking it up and like shaking it, like fucking, I'll tell you kids, whatever, you know, like an old man on his lawn or whatever. Um, and I said something in response, right? And I posted what, like, basically in my mind's eye, what I seen, what I would say, you know, which I said, lay it down. Like, you're fucking sitting there shaking a stick, you know, you shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. Lay it down, right? And then in my mind's eye, I seen him set the thing down. And then he picked it up again real fast, like he was going to do something. And like I said, lay it down, bitch. Like, what are you going to do about it, basically? And then, so I posted those online. And then the very next day, when I had a dream that I had seen someone that I didn't get along with at some point in time in my life as a corpse, unfortunately, which was a nightmare. I'm like, what is it? He had somebody else like showing his teeth, like, or he kept showing his teeth. Like, why the fuck are you trying to show me your teeth? Like a corpse's teeth. Like the fucking weirdest dream ever. I'm like, and then when I woke up the next morning, that guy, that Yahya Sinwar guy, the guy that was responsible for the October the 7th attacks in Israel, had eaten shit and died, dude. Someone, they fucking killed him, and they have drone footage of it when it occurred. And the strangest thing is that it was a guy holding a fucking stick, I swear to God, and he's sitting there shaking it, and then for some reason he sets it down, right? And then he picks it up and he starts shaking it again, just like I had seen, you know. And at the time, like, had I known the significance of what that was or what was gonna, I didn't know. Like, of course, no one fucking knew. I would have gone into more detail, but if I went into more detail about everything I think I seen or saw, so sometimes it's best just to leave it, not to say vague, purposely vague, but instead of getting into like, you know, part of remote viewing is that if that is indeed what is occurring, right, it is not necessarily like it's not as perfect as just getting like a fucking picture from the future, you know, at least not yet anyways. I'm sure they'll probably have something like it eventually, but yeah, but you can imagine I had that nightmare, woke up, and then I'm like, what the fucking corpse of all things? I don't dream about that kind of shit very often, dude. I don't even like fucking gore or any of the stuff, dude. All bothers me so much, right? And then, like, so that was a very out of place nightmare to have, really, you know. And then the news was like, well, we have to fucking something about getting his teeth to confirm that it was him and all that shit. How weird was that? But in the nightmare that I had, it was like someone else had their glove on trying to show him their teeth or whatever it was, or he was like, he kept trying to show his teeth to me, but he had a glove on. I'm like, that's kind of weird. And yeah, so that's another instance of it. And that's, I don't know, like, what you consider to be well documented, but no, I have the post where I said all the shit, you know. It's not a whole lot, but I could have gone into more detail. Like, if someone said, we want you to do like a remote viewing session and describe, I would have described what I seen, but instead I just posted what I would have said, right? Which to some people might constitute enough to say, yeah, that's a bit weird, or that, hey, no, that convinces me of something, right? But the thing is, like, any one of these instances alone, I think, could get chalked up to just happenstance or, you know, chance or coincidence. But in reference to some of the things, yeah, I don't know. Some of it's hard to discredit. So I'm not saying like, oh, it's so compelling and convincing that turn a skeptic into a believer that there's more to like consciousness, and consciousness being non-local, and also time being non-linear in some way, shape, or form, right? But still interesting enough to make you go, fucking make you scratch your head, at least, right? I hope. And there's a whole bunch of other shit, you know, but I'm not gonna get into all of it right now. But I'm just trying to think of things in particular about certain things that, yeah. So like when I say on Twitter, like I'll say something like, for most of the time I'll just say something, right? And I'm like, I find out that it doesn't make sense until after it happens, you know, and it just, you know what I mean? That happens relatively frequently. I don't know if that was the guy that killed me earlier or not. He had an ice barrier, so I think it was him. But the thing is, like, you know how those people always say, oh, The Simpsons, they predicted it, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's something similar, you know what I mean? Like, either those guys are tapped into some, like, whether they know it or not, on purpose or whatever, they're always like, they're part of the Illuminati, you know? Like, well, maybe they're just plugged in, you know? Because, you know, there are some things that are uncanny. Oh, another thing is, in the Matrix, the 9/11 thing, right? Like, I'm not the only person that's had, like, weird shit happen like that before, so before I start getting blamed for like having inside knowledge of things, which happens, you know, at some point in time, I'm sure, consider for a moment that I've got like kind of a track record of knowing what to say without knowing what to think, if that makes any sense. um, so, you know, because you watch the thing of The Simpsons and like, oh, they fucking blah blah blah, the Epstein files. Like, because one thing from an episode 20 years ago said there's a bunch of creepy people running the planet from an island somewhere. You're like, yeah, that's not one of the more convincing things that has happened, but you know, there are some very convincing things that have occurred on that show. But that being said, why is that guy trying to pull so much shit? So I'm not the only one that has had weird things happen. I want to have a fucking way to talk to people that have also had things, you know, because if you think about it, like weirdness. What's that movie with Tom Cruise? Minority Report. Like, what was the thing? Like, they don't have like a full vision of the future. They have to build like a consensus of what they think the future might be by what a combination of what multiple precognitive entities say is going to happen, and they, you know what I mean? They draw a probability as to what the future might look like, kind of based on like the opinions of these kind of like brainless jelly creatures that can somewhat predict the future or whatever. So you would think, like, not to say, oh, I'm putting a team together, fucking X-Men or whatever, but it would be cool to. But if you could find enough people that are able to do, like, if you think about, like, from a technical analysis sense, that these are indicators of what the future might consist of, a way of combining what multiple people that have some precognitive ability together to as indicators for future events, and try to build like that crystal ball thing people always talk about, predict the future and all that. That would be the goal. You know what I mean? But it would be like, oh well, you've got a guy that somehow always gets like one or two of the numbers right. You know what I mean? You got a numbers guy and a guy that has, like, you know, just various remote viewers to try and build a consensus of, like, you know, paint a picture of the future with that kind of thing, versus like one person making a super bold prediction, you know, and that never works, you know. But a consensus based crystal ball would be, I think, the best way to do it. And that is kind of what some of the conspiracy theorists have claimed, the alien technology and all that stuff. If you find that shit interesting, yeah, like, I'm not trying to sit there, look, I'm not trying to fucking, I'm definitely not asking for donations. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to find people that find this kind of thing interesting, and if you do, I've got a track record a mile long of the shit, basically. I mean, as much as anybody could have. So, yeah, that being said, but I think the public is lightening up to this kind of thing, with because, you know, the alien stuff and everything else. So I jokingly say, but to kind of seriously, right? If I ever disappear, it's certainly, yeah, right. It's not to do with my top secret alien psychic research, right? But for someone that was raised on Coast to Coast and Project Camelot and all that stuff, right? Yeah, I probably sound like a kook, dude. Yeah, you're like, yeah, well, we were going to hire you until all this shit started. Yeah, now you're, right. That's fucking, yeah, it's a joke. Well, it's not, what I'm saying isn't a joke, but, like, you can't have a sense of humor about this shit. Yeah, you have to. Anyway, for those who know me, they know, right? Like, my kind of people are like, no, this guy's got us convinced that he can fucking predict the future. Like, he's lying to us if he says he can't, right? And that there are people that really, like, I know my friends, dude, yeah, they all find it super interesting. you'd imagine the stigma involved in even pretending, not to say even pretending, but like, right, right. I'll tell some more stories about this strange fucking, these strange people from the army that always show up in my life in the strangest way. Yeah, I'll tell more stories about that eventually. Very bizarre. And I say it like, call it out like it is, and then it fucking, this shit happens like consistently. Consistently. What is it with the fucking army? Like I might have worked for him in the past life or something. But there are people, like, I would think that what I have had to say, like the instances where shit did come true to an extent, right? Like what I have, what I say is circumstantial proof or evidence, I think would extend past what you would consider to be bullshit. You know, like it would be enough for you to say, well, it's not nothing, and as long as it's not nothing, right? Then the fucking thing there is, well, like, how much evidence do you need to be convinced of something versus like, you at least agree that this is evidence, right? It's like, okay, so you believe me then, right? If you just agree that it's not nothing, then fucking, right? What weird though was kind of weird about that guy that tried to shoot the president. So the last time I was in jail, there was this like, just ratty, like just kind of fucking out of control, like walking around pissing all over stuff, just crazy person that was there, and he looked just like that guy that tried to kill the president. And he was kept bothering the shit out of me to the point where like I hardly ever get into physical altercations with people. Like even in jail, I've managed to keep it to just one instance of like having to get it physical with anybody, right? But this, whatever reason, this kid picked me out of the crowd. He was about 5 foot tall, like a little ratty, looked just like the guy. This was like 2 years before it happened, and I'm like, why? Like he kept sneaking up behind me and like flicking my ear and like trying to like whisper in my ear and shit and like and try to scare me and all this stuff. I'm like, I had to turn around like multiple times and set the kid straight and say like, look, if you like, I'm going to like basically I'm gonna fucking pummel you if you don't knock it the fuck off, right? And he would like, and he would walk off like a robot. He would be like, okay, and he would, I swear to God, you know, I'm like, that is very strange. And he was running around just acting like a fucking crazy person. He didn't seem to be getting into anybody else's business. He didn't seem to be bothering anybody else. But for whatever fucking reason, dude, he would not leave me alone. To the point where I would have felt terrible for him having made me do it. But like, I only ever got into like one fight, and 2 other instances of people just trying to push me for whatever reason. Almost ended up in a fight, but didn't, right? And yeah, just I thought that was just very bizarre. I'm like, the kid looked just like him, just running around acting like a fucking crazy person. So if that kind of thing ever happens to you, I guess just pay attention to it. Like kind individuals, whatever you say, people that have resemblance. You know, I mean, I don't know what to do with it just yet, but I know it's not nothing. You know, but I've always supported this idea that, rather not yet again something I can't prove, speculation, but that but something I'm coming to find out with like AI and stuff is that they do say, or they say that the like the way AI thinks, you know, the way its brain actually works and stuff is sort of like an expression of a higher dimensional. It's stored in a higher dimensional sense. Like the idea is on like a map, basically. I wish I could explain it better, so I didn't get into too many words that I'm not necessarily familiar with. But the information is stored in like a not in a physical dimension sense, but like a grid structure where higher dimensional, not physics, but if that makes any sense, right? And the thing is I've always had the idea, like at least that our dimension, where like we see is like the first, second, third dimension in time, and all that stuff being the fourth dimension, and like the events that we experience in our day-to-day lives is an expression of something from a higher dimension. It's the same guy. So it is kind of, I didn't necessarily know how to explain what it is that I thought it might have been, but like, if, yeah, yeah, I don't really know. I wish I had a better way of explaining it. But once I got to see what, like, they said, like, this is what, whatever, this is what a frog looks like according to AI, and it was like a graph, right? And it was like a higher dimensional graph, more than just like 1, 2, and 3. It had however many intersections and all that stuff. You're like, that doesn't look like a frog to me, you know, like, no, but to AI, that's what it interprets a frog, you know, it's like a flat thing with like peaks and troughs and all that stuff, right? So I thought that that's kind of interesting that you can store information that way, right? Yeah, I guess I'm gonna log, man. It's fucking more or less just wanted to, I wasn't on all day, went for a couple walks, I did like 3 or 4 miles. Did you attack me earlier? I don't know if you did or not. So, yeah. That's one of those things, like, these aren't things that I want to get into if my only explanation is, well, you just have to believe me, you know, I hate that. So, where I can present some kind of, whatever you want to call it, proof, if any, right? And that's where I'm going to try and focus my intent towards, as far as their explanation or presentation is concerned, right? Anyway.